So, John, I guess welcome to the first of a podcast we haven't named yet.
Delighted to be here, yeah, with the fruit talk on the agenda.
Yeah, why don't we call it Talking Fruit for now? So,
Sounds good.
Introduce myself. So, I'm Graham. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I love saving the planet. I have a venture capital fund, and that's all it does inside agri-food tech. And currently running a company, It's Fresh.
I'm John Barfoot. I have most of my life spent in the produce industry. I am currently the strategic sales director at It's Fresh, and I engage with clients all over the world in respect of fruit and fruit transportation storage.
Cool. So the reason for this, as far as I'm concerned, is that when I joined this company, I knew nothing about fruit. Actually, don't tell my investors that. But I hadn't been in the industry, right? There's a huge amount of complexity in this industry. As far as I was concerned, there's loads we can learn. I think there's a lot of things that consumers would like to know. I think there are things that we can sort of show people, bargains, all sorts of things. But you've been in fruit the whole time. And is it a complex place?
I think one of the things that draws people into this industry and what holds them here is that complexity, Graham. They say you become a produce lifer, and there's a lot of people in the industry that have spent 30, 40 years and still haven't got to the bottom of it. It is a vastly interesting subject area. If you follow the value chain all the way from farming all the way to consumers and everything in between, you're still not covering every aspect.
Okay, that's cool. So, I mean, I haven't got a whole lot to do on this one, I'm afraid. I'm probably halfway through, maybe even 2/3 of the way through my career, so I'm going to play catch up. But it's not all great, right? There's a huge amount of waste, I think, and that's one of the reasons that we got into this as investment. But if you had to say, like, from the amount that's grown to the amount that we actually eat, how much do you reckon is wasted every year?
Up to a half, if you look at the whole value chain, and if you were to sort of look at what the United Nations are telling us in terms of food waste.
Stop. Did you say a half?
Yeah, I'd say about a half, yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay, so
it's either left on the farm, in the field, or wasted through the value chain, or at the consumer's home.
I mean, that is completely ridiculous. So if I think about like the world, we've got the United States, massive area for growing stuff, Latin America, massive area for growing stuff, Europe, big area. We could actually like delete one of those and still have the same amount of food.
Yeah, I think if you're talking sort of top line quantum, I mean, you'd have to look at the redistribution of it, but yeah, I think it's an ethical issue, but also it's a massive waste of resources.
It is crazy. We have people that are starving in half the world. We've got people who are getting a poor diet, they get no vegetables, and we throw half of them away. I think this is something we can probably talk about for a while, right?
Yeah, it's a very big subject matter, and then that's, you're not even considering all of the wasted resources behind growing that fruit in terms of carbon, what that looks like. I think one of the stats that I pulled was that about a third of the world's CO2 comes from food waste, which is really, really concerning. Given that food has to be transported, it needs fertilizers to feed it, it needs electricity to cool it. So if you think of all the life cycle of carbon trapped within food that's going to be thrown away, it's one of our biggest issues.
I think as a consumer then, we should never be throwing our stuff away. We've got to do our best to eat what we buy. At least that's something that every one of us can do every day, yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, I always remember the kind of the words of my grandmother who didn't believe in throwing any food away at all. There will always be a way of recovering it or creating value from it in some form. And it was an absolute sin to be wasting anything.
And I guess fresh fruit, super expensive as well on produce. But hold on, if we're throwing half it away and we've got 100% of the cost, does that mean if we got this right, it should probably be cheaper, we could all get a better diet?
I think the supermarkets would absolutely agree with you, Graham. There would be a way of getting value for that waste, and that would either be in improved utility, improved sales, or it would be in terms of reduced costs. So I think that's probably something they would agree.
We can finally pay farmers what they're worth, or maybe split the difference.
Well, yeah, and that would be a wonderful thing. But it's those two parts of the supply chain are working together. They're not as perhaps as opposed as people would believe. They're working together to find the most efficient solution.
All right, so what we're trying to do is we're going to have a series of podcasts, right? And I think what we'll try and do today is set up sort of this idea of how does a global supply chain work a little bit, and then after that, let's go into sort of one fruit per day. Because, I mean, what I've learned a teeny little bit of, and I hope to get much more out of it, is, a grape is not a grape, a raspberry is not a raspberry. So we'll get into that, I reckon. We can pick up some different areas. That would be fantastic. Like, my first question to you, like, roughly speaking in the world, where is fruit grown?
I mean, we have obviously from the perspective of being in Northern Europe, which is one of the biggest markets, obviously North America, but Northern Europe in the Northern Hemisphere, we are the consumers of fruit.
Okay, so we eat it up here in the north.
We eat it in the north, but in terms of having that 52-week calendar of availability, so that when you go to your local market, wholesaler, greengrocer, or go online to buy your fruit, what you'll see is 52 weeks of supply, and you'll see a large part of that in terms of the origin of supply being in the Southern Hemisphere. So they're growing it. Less people live in the Southern Hemisphere, but they're growing all the fruit and they're shipping it north.
Yeah.
And then obviously during our own...
So let just make sure I understand. So we all live in the north, but we grow all our stuff in the south. So that means what? We've got to ship it 2,000, 3,000 miles every time I want something that I can't grow right now. Like today, where are we? It's... early October. I presume outside I can't grow a raspberry. So if I want a raspberry now, is that coming from Chile?
Yeah, that won't be coming from Chile, no. What tends to happen is, with the way that the season changes between summertime in the north and hemisphere to summertime in the south, there's almost like if you look at it as a relay race, a baton change will happen, and slowly production will move south to the equator, and then south into the southern hemisphere.
Got it.
So if we think about raspberries being an example, we'll see the first raspberries start to come through in July. They're a bit of a midsummer.
They need come through here in England.
Through in England, through locally.
Got it.
At the end of July, what we'll start to see is actually raspberries will move to Scotland of all places, because Scotland has very high light levels and a cooler temperature.
Hold on, you told me it moved south.
Well, this is about production within domestic markets.
Okay, so, well, let's not go into too much detail there right now.
But then it will come down after Scotland's finished. It will come down into Europe. We'll start seeing it in Portugal, and then into Spain, and then into Morocco, which will overwinter. It will get us moving through the winter on the raspberries, as an example.
Okay, well, so let's leave it there on raspberry. But in essence, what we're talking about is now the world's is an entire supply chain, and it all runs around the world. Half the year it's got to ship thousands of miles from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere. That's got to be where a lot of this waste is coming from, and I guess we should get into it in detail.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask you one quick question though? Why do we need grapes 365 days a year? Like when I grew up, I seem to remember Satsumas arrived just before my birthday in November, and they were awful by about January.
Yeah.
So why do I want a raspberry all year round? What's happened?
Well, I think for that we've got to thank the commitment and determination of our supermarket model in the UK and in Northern Europe as well, where they build category plans that are 52 weeks, because there is a commercial opportunity.
You're not allowed to say things like category plans.
Okay, we'll stay away from technical knowledge, but one of the wonderful things about a supermarket is you can buy everything you need all of the time. Some people might disagree, but actually in terms of different fruits and different varieties of fruits, there is now no particular season. It's a 52-week patchwork quilt of availability.
But that happens by getting it from all over the place instead of...
Absolutely.
I grew this in Kent, it grows there for 3 months, then it stops. Okay, so this is like supermarket derived. They've said, or actually I guess it's us, isn't it?
It's
right?
us,
we said, I will buy a raspberry in December, therefore somebody said, fine, I'll figure out how to grow your raspberry.
And look, I think we've been travelling the world since the 70s, haven't we? And we've picked up tastes for different things, and those things have suddenly become staples. When you were a child, did you ever eat a sweet potato? Ever?
Good
this is a classic.
No, because in Somerset we do not have sweet potatoes. But anyway, let's take a break right there. That's a great start. Thank you. So I just realised, we've gone through a whole bunch of material and we forgot something. We have you here, expert in fruit, me here investing in running companies, and we have behind the camera...
Of course.
Hi guys, I'm Amelia. I'll be behind the scenes as the recorder for today's conversation.
Hey, to me that sounds like you're reading it, but let's remember what you're actually going to do is jump in and make sure that you actually understand, right? You're a consumer, you're a buyer, and actually you represent the generation we're trying to save the planet for. So please ask any questions you want.
That's actually really important. Yeah, we're doing this for you. It's all about you.
Exactly.
And you've spoiled it.
we broke it, but we're going to fix it so that you've got a future.
Exactly.
So let's get back to our subject. We've only got one or two more things I think I want to cover in this episode. I've heard this term only since I joined this company called good, better, best. Now I'm assuming I always buy the best fruit. Not that I go to whatever high-end wage supermarket we're talking about, but no, I thought all fruit is pretty good these days. So what does good, better, best actually mean? In consumer speak, please.
Now, in consumer speak, so let's take it through the eyes of a consumer. So you've walked into the store, you've approached the fixture. The fixture is what they call the shelves.
Yeah, got it.
And in front of you, you've got, let's just say, grapes, because it's a great example.
Okay.
And what you'll see, and this is based on just principles of consumer psychology. At the bottom, you'll have probably the lowest value. So let's say it was £1 for a packet of something. And then you've got the middle section of the fixture, which will be £2.
Got it.
And then the top tier, the top shelf, so to speak, will be the £3.
Okay, so good, better, best.
Absolutely, that's
Okay,
it.
fine. Here's a question though. Is it always completely different varieties if we're talking grapes? Is it like standard variety, kind of cool variety, something that only pop stars can afford? I mean, what how does it work? Or is it a grading thing? What is the story?
Listen, there are many different ways of doing good, better, best, but I would say if it was a sensationally presented good, better, best decision making structure, you would have at the top you'd have the best variety you could get your hands on.
Okay.
Something that was premium. So, for example,
you can't give me examples
I can't give
because
examples.
otherwise we can't talk grapes later.
We can't talk grapes later. We'll go back into that, but yeah, you'd have your exclusive premiums at the top.
Porsche, Ferrari, yeah.
You want to go Porsche, Ferrari, absolutely. In the middle, you'd have your Mercedes and your BMWs. That
I don't. Mercedes
maybe
maybe
Volkswagen.
not quite as good these days.
maybe
Anyway,
they've fallen
carry
off. And then at the bottom, you'd have your entry level.
Be careful here.
And
Entry level here doesn't mean awful, like I'm going to Eastern Europe. This is still pretty good fruit, right? I mean,
yeah, it might be an older variety. It might be a smaller size. It might be something possibly that when the importer brought it in, they looked at the material they've got and they said actually that there, we probably need to mark that down. So rather than put a yellow sticker on it, Graham,
yeah.
it's actually putting a brand into that bottom tier.
Now, here's another thing I want to get out of our podcast is I reckon every week there's got to be a bargain at the supermarket, right?
There's always a bargain, yes.
That probably means that there are times when a really, really good variety comes in, and I'm going to guess they've got a little too much of it. So although we get into our Porsche and Ferrari shelves, does some of it ever make it down towards the bottom for a better price?
It does, Graham, and that's interesting. You should make that comment because in some retailers they actually have their own what I call in-house brand.
Yeah.
That rather than call it cheap and cheerful, they'll call it Suntrail Farms or Oakland Farm or something along those lines, so that the consumer doesn't think they're being.
This is very cool. Okay, so what we'll try and do is anytime we can, let's see if we can spot it right in the supermarket. And I think in our next episodes, we'll try and buy some stuff straight off the shelf, and we'll figure it out.
And we'll explain why it's in there. And you're absolutely correct. It could be actually that it's as good as any other quality you see on the day. It's just been put in there, perhaps because they've just got oversupply of it.
I smell a bargain. Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we should leave it there. When we come back to you, we also meaning Amelia behind the camera. Thank you very much.
No worries,
we're going to, I think, go to different types of fruit. I guess that's going to be sort of seasonal, right? But when we come back, episode 2, you'll have to pick a fruit. We'll spend 5-10 minutes talking about it, and hopefully you can tell me whether it fits on which shelf, why it's good, bad, ugly, the things that we have to deal with, and that'll be fantastic. So
great. That sounds
Thanks,
like
John.
fun. Good.
Great.
Thanks.